Hi, good evening. Welcome. My name's Andrea Gartner. I'm the chairman of the Danbury Democratic Town Committee and your host for this evening, another installation of Danbury Dems. This evening, we have another candidate that we'd like to introduce the community to. Currently, Sidney Almeida is serving as an alternate on the Zoning Commission. Previously was an alternate. You're currently an alternate. Yes, sorry. Yeah. He's still an alternate on the Zoning Commission, and he will be running as a zoning commissioner in the upcoming elections. Welcome, Sidney.
Great to be here.
Yeah,
thank you.
I appreciate you coming in, and I know this forum is new to you, and it's not for everyone, but I really appreciate you deciding to join us.
I'm excited to be here, so yeah, cool.
So Sidney and I were talking a little bit earlier, and one of the things is when the position became available as a zoning alternate, that we generally make a recommendation to fill that position, and I got to know a little bit about your background. And one of them is that you're not native to Danbury. You actually, despite your very sort of Danbury last name of Almeida, not native to Danbury, but you found your way as a young adult into the Danbury community. So do you want to just tell us
I mean, I'm a Jersey boy, born in New Jersey, and I'm Portuguese. I grew up in a very vibrant Portuguese community down there. So yeah, when I was 22, I moved up here not realizing that there was a big Portuguese community here too. So that was kind of a very welcome thing. You know, moving somewhere where, you know, I had that community where I can kind of plant my roots and grow. And I mean, I love Danbury. As soon as I came up here, I fell in love, and I said, this is the place for me. I'm not leaving. You know, I'm gonna live here, raise a family here, and here I've been. And
you've been anchored in ever since.
Yeah, ever since.
Now, you said a job relocation brought you to Danbury. Was that tied to your current profession in the real estate business?
No, actually, I was a manager of a retail store in East Brunswick, and you know, at the time, the district manager, my boss, kind of noticed that I was bored, and he offered me the position up here in Danbury. It was a great great opportunity for me, and you know, I packed everything into my little Toyota Tercel, and I came up here, and you couldn't even tell me where Danbury was on the map. It was like somewhere up by Canada, as far as I knew. But you know, once I got up here, I was like blown away by by everything. And you know, I took the position, and I was there for a few years. Did very well with it, and then, you know, never looked back. I got into real estate after I left that position. So, yeah, completely different change. You know, it was a different thing, but, you know, it worked out. I'm here.
Yeah, so. And also, you mentioned raising a family. You have a high school graduate this year from Danbury High School.
Yep, my son Damien graduated from DHS just last week, and you know, now he's down in Florida scuba diving, and he'll be going to college in the fall.
That's terrific. And his experience, he went through Danbury Public Schools, right?
Yep, he went to Pembroke, then Broadview, and just graduated from DHS, so yeah. And born and bred in Danbury.
And now you're having another experience with putting a child in the Danbury school system with little Vincent, right? Who's 6? Is he 6? 5, 6?
He's going to be 6 in October. I know, time flies. Yeah. So my oldest son was with you know, another relationship. He lives with me full time, and I decided to start all over. So you know, little Vincent's Pembroke also, and we're expecting a third one in September.
Yeah, so you really you'll be a one-person focus group as far as what might need improving in our education system in Danbury.
Yeah, I'll have kids at every stage of the Danbury school system, yeah.
And then also you've been quite active, at least ever since I've known you, in the Danbury Democratic Party, but that didn't really come initially when you moved to Danbury. Because I always think it's interesting for people to understand that you know, we can all get involved in our own way, and when the time's right, or when there's matters of importance to us, we choose to get involved and engage civically in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I was very apolitical. In fact, in college, I was a college Republican because, you know, there was a girl that I was interested in. But I was never...
Always the reason, right, to pick a party.
But I was never interested in politics. And, you know, when I moved up here, I was 22. I didn't know anything. I didn't really get involved until 2005 when Ned Lamont ran against Joe Lieberman for the Senate. And I was just compelled to do something because I just felt at that time that our involvement in the Iraq War was not a good idea. And so I backed to Ned and tried to help him win so that we can change that policy. It didn't work out at that time, but Chris Murphy won that year. He ran for the House, and then 2 years later, or 4 years later, 2010, he ended up, becoming our senator, and it worked out in the long run. But after that, I kind of stayed involved. I joined the Democratic Party to vote in the primary against Joe. And
now, had you been previously registered to vote,
no,
or just
no.
unaffiliated, or just...
I was unaffiliated, but I registered as a Democrat to vote, and I just stayed with the party. And in 2016, again, I just felt compelled again to get involved. Like I said, I'm a Jersey boy, so I kind of know Donald Trump.
And his impact on neighborhoods.
Oh, sure, and what he's done down in AC and everything, and so. I just felt I needed to do something, even if it was just making phone calls or whatever.
It's hard for me to imagine, just knowing you the time that I do, knowing how active you were in the state elections in 2018 and previous to that with like walking and phone banking, the things that really make a difference in an election. To think that you at one point, it wasn't until 2006 you weren't registered to vote.
No, I could care less. It's just, at a certain point, you have to kind of stop complaining about the bad government and do something about it. And I just figured I had to do something about it. Be the change. Right?
Yeah, and now you're an elected official. You're holding elected position and running for office again.
Yeah. Again, I just felt compelled to do something because after 2016, we kind of felt. I personally kind of felt a little helpless. So I figured, well, let me run for something, and zoning is right up my alley. It's just. Because of what I do now, and I'm a real estate appraiser, I deal with zoning issues, on a daily basis, part of my job. And, zoning, running for that position was just a perfect fit.
Yeah, and I think
even
too,
as an alternate.
What people, right, as an alternate,
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this in the last time we had some of our zoning candidates, is that even as an alternate, you end up coming to the meetings. Generally, a lot of times you do get seated because it really is hard to gather the full commission. Right. And you listen and vote as a full member during those hearings.
No, absolutely, and you have to be prepared, to sit in and make decisions that can, affect, people in Danbury and the issues. So it's an important position. I mean, you see the word alternate and you think it's not, but I've sat in on votes on just about every meeting. So yeah, it's great. It's been a great learning experience. You're the kind
of alternate that shows up at every meeting, so chances are you will get seated.
Well, except for last night, but we'll forget about that one. But yeah, no, I try to not only be at every meeting, but be prepared. So as soon as we get the agenda, what's going to be on the meeting, I do the research like a diligent appraiser that I am, OCD. I do all the research and try to inform myself as to what's going on there. And I just think that's what I should be doing, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is for people to understand the connection between, zoning regulations, changing zonings or use is tied to development, which is tied to economic impact in our community,
Absolutely.
Quality of life.
Yeah.
So these things do have repercussions. I feel, you've been in the community long enough to see the surge of development, especially on the west side of town.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of it potentially unplanned and having impacts that not everyone has, well, people are upset with the consequences now of.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the West Side, because on one of your earlier interviews with Candace Fay, she was mentioning how she had to have her child bused 45 minutes to Shelter Rock, and that's one of the impacts of the overdevelopment on the West Side. Because of that, they have to bus kids across town because there's no room in the schools, and that's part of what zoning does or should be doing, and part of what the city should be doing as far as planning for growth in a smart way. And unfortunately, I don't think it's been done in the city for a while, and we end up with issues like that where people have to bus their children 45 minutes to school across town.
Right, or potentially
or have overcrowded
the zoning,
situations.
Yeah, and zoning regulations sort of meeting the needs of developers who want to develop projects.
The zoning should be meeting the needs of the city in general, not specific developers, and it shouldn't be really catering to the whims of these developers, or kind of based on market trends at the time, because as we all know, the market from one year to another can dramatically change, and it could impact the city, and so we have to have a long-term vision, I think, with zoning, and kind of planned for the future down the road, and have a very broad view of what the impact will be, because like
and balance. I think
in
there
balance,
needs to be
yeah,
balance.
absolutely. Because, for example, what we do with zoning also impacts things like taxation. People don't realize that, but working in valuation, I see that a lot. And if you don't, develop the city and plan the city properly, it impacts values, which impacts taxation. People will be adversely affected and end up paying more in taxes if the city doesn't grow properly. So.
Right, if there's too much of a percentage, say, on residential development, then it's really individual taxpayers footing the bills.
Are footing more of the
rather
burden.
Than commercial
absolutely.
Operators.
Yeah.
And also there's been, I don't know if you've noticed this trend too, the conversion of taking away some light industrial and commercial space and ceding it to residential use in areas that were previously designated as commercial.
It's commercial, right. And it kind of shifts the balance, makes it uneven, because it's shifting the balance over to residential, and the residential properties are taking on an increased amount of the burden of the taxes. And you need to have that balance in order to keep the city growing and the tax base stable and lower.
Yeah, and then also impact on our roads and our infrastructure.
Sure. It's all tied together. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which then may be a deterrent, or the state of which is either an incentive or a deterrent for people to live, work, and play in our community.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look at our roads now. Our roads are in shambles everywhere I go, and I travel throughout the city as part of my job every day. I mean, there's potholes all over.
Yeah, I think that's a universal awareness that the citizens in Danbury have.
Yeah, I'm sure they're voicing it.
So I have a question, because it does come up, and I think there have been some potential criticisms levied in the past with people whose primary livelihood is in real estate serving on a zoning commission. I have my opinion of that, but I'd like to hear yours first.
Well, my opinion is this. I mean, if you're going to have somebody crafting law, why not have a lawyer? If you're going to have somebody working as far as real estate and zoning and planning issues, why not have people who are involved in real estate and know it? I mean, it's just common sense to me. I don't know. That
your background would inform. It makes you a better commissioner to have that background.
I mean, I'd like to think so. I mean, I want to pat myself on the back, but but like I said, I deal with zoning issues every day as part of my business, and I see what other towns are doing, and see what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and I think it helps me to kind of understand what would work better in our town in particular instances, just because I have this broad view of what other towns are doing and not doing. And you know, I think that's a good perspective to have for someone from someone on these type of positions, as opposed to someone who doesn't know, you know, zoning issues or real estate, and are making these weighty decisions that might affect, you know, the community and the city.
Well, yeah, that will have repercussions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is a very critical commission, I think. That's why I enjoy serving on it as well.
Yeah.
So what are some of the and you've been in the community long enough, really through, you know, your oldest son growing up, and now
Yeah, it's been 25 years now.
Yeah, so you've been able to see some of the impact of decisions that have been made. Is there anything that, if you had your top best project or the worst, do you have any opinions about like what seemingly has worked and what maybe doesn't work at the moment?
Well, I think, for example, there's been some talk lately about the train connecting it to the Metro North line, the Harlem line.
Which is over in Southeast, yeah,
right.
crossing the border.
And I know Ted mentioned that he'd been discussing that with the previous mayor, Eric, decades ago. I think that would be a tremendous boon to the city. But I mean, it needs to be planned for accordingly. You can't just do it and then try to piece everything together afterwards.
Stop with the plan that's been created.
Yeah, and Danbury right now has a plan, the TOD, which I read, and it's pretty good. From my personal opinion, I think it could be a little broader. I'd like to see more interconnectivity between the train station and you know, places of recreation like Rogers Park, maybe connected to other neighborhoods like North Street and all that. And I think we need to look at, you know, bringing residential closer to the train station to make it more walkable and easily accessible, get cars off the street, because, again, and this goes back to planning, if that train station does happen, there's going to be a lot of traffic coming into the city from the surrounding towns. Instead of going over to New York, they're going to come into Danbury. So
unless they're already living in downtown.
Well, but
right?
there's a lot of, there's a lot of people that, you know, commute from Brookfield and Bethel and all that. They're going to be coming to Danbury downtown. So we have to, you know, work on that, make sure our roads can handle the added congestion. And, you know, it'd be nice if we can get people in town off the road by having them move closer, or having, you know, walkways that make the train station more accessible. You know, so that's something I would like to see.
And I think too, any plan forward around transit-oriented development needs to look at both alternatives, to focus maybe on improving our existing line, which people are using, and really asking for more frequency, and upgrading the train cars on that, which would make any commute into, you know, Norwalk or down to Stamford easier. And as well as maybe really looking at the possibility of connecting to Southeast.
No, absolutely. We need to look at both, because in reality, I mean, there's a lot of people that commute down into, you know, lower Fairfield County as well. Norwalk, Stamford, yeah, that's a big center of employment, those two areas. And if we can upgrade that line down into Norwalk, that too will take a lot of cars.
Including the frequency,
including the frequency. That'll take a lot of cars off the road there. And you know, again, it'll be a big boon to the city, but we have to plan for it. You know, we can't just do it and then, oh, look at all these cars on the road, now we got to do something about it. We need to be proactive. And
I'm sensing from what you're saying that that maybe the city leadership hasn't been proactive in that regard.
I don't think so. I mean, the TOD plan that they put out was a good start, but I mean, there really hasn't been a plan, what, in 20 years, right? The last plan, master plan, was 98, 99, I think.
Yeah.
And you can tell just by the way the city's been developing. It's been very hodgepodge, and there's really no long-term plan. And so, you know, you overdevelop this area, and then, oh, you know, schools are overcrowded, what do we do?
Well, you see the consequences of those decisions.
Right.
What they've
and
what's happened.
You know, again, because I travel, I mean, I work in every town and city in Fairfield County, Litchfield, New Haven, I see what other places are doing, like Norwalk. I mean, they have extensive plans there, down there for all these developments that they're doing. And I mean, they're kind of blowing us away.
Right, and that's a similarly sized city. We're very, very similar to Norwalk in demographics.
Similar demographics, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're sister cities.
Yes, except we have a much safer city.
Well,
but,
yeah, and
I point that out to people
and
because
they have
our
the
downtown
sound,
is very
right?
safe.
And you know, we have Kenwood Lake.
Yeah.
But you know, as far as demographics and size and all that, we're very comparable.
Yeah, and I think part of their success is they have a city department that is focused on economic development.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's definitely a priority within with their city hall, with their leadership.
And Stamford too. Stamford is another one. You know, in the last 15 years, I worked in Stamford in 2003. Part of the assessor's office. We did the reval down there, and you know, from then till now, the amount of growth that I've seen in Stamford is tremendous. Stamford will be, I think, the biggest city in the state of Connecticut within the next decade or two.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're growing tremendously, and what they've done down there is, it blows your mind away. It really
Yeah, a lot
does.
of that is focused around the downtown, with their downtown social services district.
Yep, and the South End, which they've put a lot into the Harbor Town area.
Well, I think what's important to know is that Danbury does have a downtown social services
Yes,
district.
we do.
I know that intimately as I was director of that for 8 years, whereas Norwalk does not.
No.
So
no,
a lot of the infrastructure that cities have, we already have.
We have it in place.
And it's a matter of, I think to your point, is really sitting down and trying to plan.
Absolutely.
Create a plan that
I mean, we have all the ingredients there for the city to grow. Danbury is strategically located. It's the only major city within 45 minutes in every direction. I mean, you have to go to Waterbury, Norwalk in the south. There's nothing north of us.
Right, and in this part of the state, we are the urban core.
We are the urban core. We have the largest mall in the entire region. You know, we have the infrastructure.
And successful. Yeah, we bring a lot of people in with that retail.
And we have a nice mix, you know, industries. So we're not relying on just one for our, you know, economic base. I mean, we have all the ingredients there really to grow. It's just we haven't done it in a smart way. And we basically have grown just by the sheer fact that we're in a strategic location.
So you started out getting involved in local politics based on national politics, right? Initially with Joe Lieberman, and especially then in 2016. And now you're focused on local issues. Is that are you surprised by that transition, or?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. You know, it's funny. I just, after the election 2016, a bunch of us got together and we're like, oh, what are we going to do? And we try to do something locally, and you know, especially the early days after the election, there was some tensions, and you know, we had a peace vigil, and you know, we try to do things locally, and it just kind of went from there. Like, I just didn't know where to take it, and somebody approached me about zoning, and I was like, hey, that's not a bad idea. And
Yeah, especially given your background.
yeah, given my background, I was like, you know what, that's not a bad idea. You know, let's do it. And here I am.
And I have to say, you're a regular at the town committee meetings.
Yeah, I try to go every one.
Yeah, when we have get out the vote rallies, you're there.
Yeah, I try.
Fundraisers,
Yeah, I try. You know, I have a busy life now with you know, with my 2 kids and soon to be 3, and you know, I'm kind of juggling 2 businesses because I'm also a real estate agent. So I have that. I have the appraisal, which is my full-time work. So you know, there's a lot of balls to juggle, but you know, I guess I'm a pretty good juggler.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have to be. And I think it's a great example of how people can get involved locally. I said that earlier, get civically engaged, because we all can really just do what's in front of us. And I have to say that I once door knocked with a person who was unfamiliar with door knocking, and he just said, you know, I'm retired. I feel like I complain too much. And he really felt that, well, at least if he gets out and he starts door knocking, he's probably still going to be complaining about things, but now he feels like he's doing something. and that he has the right, he's entitled to complain a little bit about how things are. And I suppose that is how it feels. So you will be part of our team knocking on doors. We're already underway actively with our campaign. I know I'm excited. I don't think it's just because as chairman of the Democratic Party, but really excited as to the slate we've put together.
Yeah, I think we have a good slate. I think Chris, he's just like a bundle of energy, and he's great. I think he'll be he'll be a great asset to the city when he's mayor. And I think we have a good shot this time. There's some dissatisfaction with the current status quo, and we see it. The roads are bad, the schools are underfunded, and and this isn't something that just happened in the last year or two. This is something that's been kind of building up.
Yeah, over 18 years. I mean, we're talking about 18
neglect.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think. Even the most casual observers, people who aren't interested in politics, you get to a point where you're just like, this, I've had it. This is enough.
Right, and I think it's time for a change.
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point. And so I'm really excited about this slate. I think we're gonna, kick butt and take names. Yeah.
There we go. I love that attitude. Thank you so much for being a guest today. Just a reminder to our viewers, Sidney Almeida, currently a zoning commission alternate, running for a position of zoning commission in the upcoming municipal elections. Thank you very much, Sidney. I want to thank the producers of this show. They've been doing a terrific job. So a shout out to the main head guy who's pulling it all together, John Goliatino. But this new series is definitely the handiwork of Lucian Giordano, Henry Hall, and Nelson Rashawn Jr. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't feel like I've acknowledged it previously. My name's Andrea Gartner. I'm the Danbury Democratic Town Committee Chair. And thank you for tuning in again to another installation of Danbury Dems.